Mike here, back out in the garage. Today I'm going to do two small projects, one of which is a Radiator stone guard. I had some leftover points that were use them or lose them with a online retailer, and normally I wouldn't have bought this, but because it was on closeout and I had a bunch of points to use, it was a wash, and I'll show you that here in a second. I don't know if you've seen this on your Scout, but the master cylinder cover tends to corrode on the Scouts. The housing itself somehow has a different type of coating on it. Maybe it's powder coated and the actual cap isn't, but the cast aluminum that the housing's made out of starts to corrode over time, and mine's doing that. I found online, same retailer, an Arles Ness set of chrome master cylinder covers for the handlebars and the foot brake. So I'm just going to swap them out because they were cheaper than the OEM Indian ones. My bike's mostly blacked out, but little tiny pieces of chrome here and there definitely help it stand out. On my Radiator, I already have a couple of dings in the fins, and so I've been meaning to pull the cover off. The factory cover is just a piece of plastic with some louvers in it, and clean it out, and then bend the little fins back. I was going to go to the hardware store and get some aluminum stucco lath, but because I had some points with the online retailer, I went ahead and bought this. It's a Klock Werks Radiator stone guard, and it fits all Scouts. It is way overpriced. If I did not have a pile of points that I had to use up or I was going to lose them, I would have never bought this. I totally would have got a piece of stucco lath and made my own. Here's what it looks like. They give you a little bit of adhesive, which I'm not going to use, and they give you this. Can you see? It's just, I think this is either laser cut or stamped, which is probably why it costs so much, because it's totally flat. A piece of stucco lath has a little bit of a raised surface because it's what they call expanded metal. They stamp a bunch of slits into it, and then they pull the sheet of metal out. And when they do that, it creates the little diamond patterns, but you have this kind of sideways profile to it, where this is pretty much flat as a pancake there. You can see that. See how flat it is? I don't think they sold many of these because I don't remember what the retail on it. It had to be like 65, 70 bucks. Outrageous. I didn't pay nearly that. I'm not going to tell you what I paid for it because it's still probably more than the stucco lath, but I only needed one piece. I didn't need a size of stucco lath big enough to make like a dozen of these. So, opportunity cost wise, screw it. I went ahead and cashed out my points. The other thing I got here is a pair. You can see these guys here. So that's the brake, the foot brake master cylinder cover, and that is the front brake. So rear, front, foot, hand, master cylinder covers. And they're cast aluminum with just like a ball mill finish on it, and then it's chrome plated. So they look really nice, and it's Arles Ness brand. It's called the 10 gauge, I guess is the style. And they've got a bunch of different versions of that for different parts, different little covers and trim pieces. But really, that I paid $25 for. From Indian, just the cover for just the handlebars alone was more than that. Because it's an Indian part, right? Just like the Harley tax, you pay the Indian tax, but I love my Scout, so I paid it. Let me tell you, that is going to look way nicer than the original one that's kind of corroded. And also, it doesn't have all these safety warning script printed into it. It's just a nice, shiny, clean look. This radiator cover here could not be easier to remove. There are two 10mm bolts, and then it just pulls straight down. You should probably think about pulling this off from time to time just to inspect and clean underneath of it. Certainly want to inspect the fins on your radiator and make sure nothing's getting stuck in there that's going to cause you a problem. Also clean it out, get a lot of bugs and cottonwood seeds and all kinds of crud kicked up from the front tire. All the different variants of the Scout, they all mount the same. So, I mean, I was almost afraid to make a video because this is so simple that I'm like, I wonder if people will think this is like I'm teaching them how to chew bubble gum and walk or something like that. On this side, there's a little clip that holds the brake line in place. That's held on by your 10 mil bolt. Then I just got to pull it off the other side. Same deal. It's just right underneath the foot peg. So after you take the bolt out, you just pull that sucker straight down and then fish it out. You just got a fastener on either side, and then there's kind of a washer there, like a metal standoff that keeps you from compressing it too much and like crushing the plastic. Kind of see some of the road grime on there. But that's it. There ain't a hell of a lot to it. And that the rock screen stone protector goes on this side. So we got a little bit of fitting to do to get that to fit in there right. But first, before I do that, we're going to straighten up some fins on this radiator. I've got some spots that you can kind of see that need straightening. And then what I'm going to do, I have this little thing that I got a while ago. I don't know where you would buy this, maybe Amazon. It's called a spudger. And it's used for doing little service work on computers, like little tiny parts. But it's plastic, and it is exactly the right size to get into the fins and kind of, manipulate them around to bend them straight, which is what I'm going to work on right now. Now, I don't know how well this is going to come out on video, but see, this fin here is just a wee bit bent. I'm going to do my best with the pointy end of the stick to just come here. And I mean, these are so soft. It actually doesn't take much to smush one. And I'm not trying to make them perfect. I'm just trying to open them up a little bit. I mean, if they're pushed in slightly, you're never going to bend it back out. All you can do is the best you can do. Well, that sounds philosophical. Just be careful. You don't want to jam this in there and then bust one of the water passages open. And also, I'm looking for any rocks or bugs. I've got a lot of these cleaned up, which I kind of did off camera because this is going to be boring, like watching paint dry. So I'm going to finish it up. When I get most of it bent out, I come back in with the wider portion of it and scooch it in between each little opening just to make sure it's clear through and the fins aren't laying down. All I care about is air passing through the radiator. I don't care if it looks perfect because I think the stone guard is going to pretty much hide any imperfections. And, it's behind the rear tire. It's never going to be perfect. So hopefully the stone guard catches some of this damage. And like I said, you don't have to buy the Klockworks one. You could totally make one out of stucco lath, and it would do the same job. So this is just the radiator shroud guard thing here. And all I'm going to do here is center it up. I'm just going to fasten it down with really tiny zip ties, and then I'm going to hide the end that I'm going to cut off, so from the front you should not really see that too much. The glamorous, super exciting life of making YouTube videos while you work on your motorcycle. So everyone at home can watch me clean a piece of plastic with simple green. Oh, I crack myself up. So what fancy tool did I figure out to use to start bending this into shape? A big Sharpie. I'm pressing it down with the fat end of a Sharpie. And I literally just held it in place and bent that edge right there. See, that's the bottom edge. And then I just center it up, and I'm going to start pressing. I think I'll start in the middle and just kind of smush the sides down with the Sharpie, and just work my way around until it fits. The clutch cable passes right by this little notch, and I noticed that these bits, and I've got it centered. I measured it to make sure it was dead center. This little piece here is a little close, so I'm going to cut these with just a pair of wire cutters here, because I don't like how dangerously close that is to where the clutch cable passes through. So I will just trim this to fit. All right, now that I got this all trimmed up, centered where I want it to go, and I've got all these edges smushed down. I'm going to zip tie these dudes down, and then that'll mount this in place. I want to make sure I figure out how to loop this around so that the buckle end of the zip tie isn't facing towards the radiator and causing it to chafe through. So there's the finished product, and now I just got to mount this back on the bike. I trimmed the zip ties as flush as I could, and I mean, you're going to see this part of the zip tie. Well, I think when it's mounted on the bike, you're really not going to see it that much. And it holds it nice and tight. It's not rattling around, and there's no piece of plastic pressing up against the radiator. I'll fish this guy up in here. Be really careful not to scratch up the fender. So there's two little pins on either side, and if you look up in there, you can kind of see where they slot into, and you just push it into place. There's no fasteners at the top of this radiator guard. There's a clip that holds your brake line on, I talked about earlier. So many times when you work on things, you need 3 hands, I swear. Then just line up the holes and bolt it in. I'm not going to do this side up all the way until I get the other side on, so I can kind of shimmy it into place and line it up. So this is where the clutch cable passes right by this radiator guard. So again, you want to be careful, you know, that it's not pinched, it's not hanging up. And that's why I trimmed that little piece of the guard off. It will fight you because it never wants to line up the way you had it, does it? There it goes. Alrighty, I'll mess with centering this up and make sure it's aligned and all that. And just tighten it down. I'm sure the manual has a torque spec on this. There's no Loctite on it, but you know, I'm just gonna choke up on the ratchet and just tighten it to the point where it's snug, not the point where I break the bolt off or strip it out. Just making sure that the brake line is held in there and I'm not pinching it. Now, I would be hard pressed, unless I got in there really tight and looked at it, to tell where those zip ties are. And it looks pretty good, and hopefully that catches the stones before they hit the fins again. But I still think you could have done that with stucco lath for like way cheaper. My very wise and lovely wife Melly once told me, why don't you lower the lift to make it easier to work on? I would, but at this point with the bike up higher, I'm going to start with the rear brake, the foot brake master cylinder cover, and we're going to get it off first. With any luck, this dude's going to come right off, and I'm not going to cry a river. Yeah, nice. That the screws are corroded in there, and they are not. So these are just Phillips screws. This guy off here very carefully. See, look at that gunk under there. And I've had it serviced, so that's just from being in storage and also all the crud it takes in when you're riding around. I'm gonna wipe off any fluid that has gotten past, because brake fluid can and will ruin paint finishes. Now is also the time if you need to top off the fluid level that you should. But I'm going to clean this dude off with some simple green here and get it ready for the new cover in here. Mainly I'm just looking to clean any schmutz, dirt, any congealed brake fluid, and try to get it as clean as I possibly can before I put the new part on. After cleaning, it started to corrode on the underside. I really want to know what the heck they make these out of at Indian. And you can see all the government, probably government mandated warnings and whatnot on there. But we don't need that dude anymore, do we? So the little seal goes back on there. I'm going to take the new cover, with screws. And I'm just gonna clean the underside of it off real quick. And this is exactly the same as the OEM as far as where it's vented and how it's shaped. If you have a problem with one of these leaking, you can always take it on a surface plate with some sandpaper and level it. Usually on brand new parts you shouldn't have this problem. I've seen that though on other bikes I've owned where it wasn't a perfectly flat surface for whatever reason for aftermarket part, and it didn't seal and it would seep out brake fluid. That dude just goes up there like so. Pretty much lines up perfectly there. Get some of my copper goop. I'm going to use this zip tie here so I don't have to take a bunch out of the container. I'm just going to get a little bit of this on the threads there so that I won't have any issues with it coming back out in the future. VersaChem Anti-Seize copper high temp formula. You can get the aluminum stuff, Never Seize brand, Permatex brand, Loctite brand. Everybody makes something similar to this stuff. As long as you try your best to use it, wipe off the excess so that when you go to take this off one day in the future, the screws will actually come off and not strip out. Because that sucks. That is a horrible job. Tighten up each side a little bit at a time until it feels like it's compressing. I don't think you need to kill it. And I do kind of remember what it was, how tight it was when I pulled off the original one. It wasn't just on there stupid tight, which is why I'm using, you know, this kind of little driver thing. So I have no risk of over tightening that. You have to say that looks a lot better than that jazz. And I mean, you know, I'm not blinging out the whole bike. It's just one little bit, you know, because you got kind of like little shiny details on the motor. Cool. Since this is pretty much exactly like doing the rear brake, you know, I'm not going to go in too great a detail. I'm just going to knock it out. Try to keep the cap separate from the... There we go. So, check that out. See how corroded that is? That is the brake fluid vapor through the vent holes. The little slit there. And this little slit. It is literally just eating it away, just from the vapor coming out. So whatever Indian finishes this in, it is not the same material that the master cylinder itself has been finished in, because there's no corrosion, no paint bubbling up on the actual master cylinder housing, only the cover. And if you look at it, the shade of it, like this is finished with some other material. It's really unfortunate too, because this stupid cover is stupid expensive. And now you'll know why I got the Arles Ness ones. I mean, it does say Indian on there, but I mean, I don't need all these government warnings on there. It's like the giant decal that the factory puts on the bike. It's kind of silly too, you know. I'm surprised that the government doesn't make them put a decal on there that says motorcycles are dangerous. Yeah, no shit. So I'll just double check, make sure I got all the schmutz off here. And this is all cleaned up here, the mating surface. That's pretty easy. Just put the dude up there, squish the gasket in, make sure the little bellows inside of there is seating the way it's supposed to. Really only goes on one way, you can't hardly mess it up. Though I'm sure somebody will try. You can clearly see the little vents on here. That's in the same spot that it is on the Indian one, the original OEM cover. Then you got that nice finish. Man, that looks good. Why they call it a 10 gauge, I don't know. Get it lined up. Now I just gotta put the screws on there with some of the copper slip never see stuff. Grab a little bit of the copper slip, and we will thread that guy on there. Man, oh man, this stuff could get everywhere. I don't think it's as bad as never sees. That aluminum stuff, man. It's like, it's crazy how you get it on everything. You don't even realize you're spreading it around. And I'm just gonna evenly tighten down both screws. And this stuff's easy, easy peasy. You do have to admit, that looks a lot better. Just that little bit of chrome. I still gotta clean the bike up. It's a little dirty from storage, but I mean, still looks pretty nice. And then there's the rear brake master cylinder. And then there's the stone guard. But you know what? It's just a few more things that makes the bike a little nicer for me, and you know, cleans up two little problems of the corrosion on those master cylinder covers. These Arles Ness 10 gauge master cylinder covers, I got them on closeout. I don't know if they're discontinued anymore, but they'll fit any year Scout. It doesn't matter which model of Scout, they're pretty much universal. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. It's much appreciated. A few simple projects to make the Scout a little bit more personable for me. I still need to clean up my Scout and get it ready for the riding season. In the next video, what I'm going to do is a 100% by the service manual oil change for my Scout. Now mine's a 2016 Scout 60, but it will apply to any Scout. I just want to show exactly what Indian specifies. I mean, you know, most people just do the oil change, they don't think twice about it, but I mean, you know, torque specs, everything, step by step by the book, and it should be interesting. So thanks to everyone for hanging out with me here in the garage for a couple of easy little projects. It's much appreciated. And until I see everybody again, ride safe and take it easy.